Welcome to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. Now, Oxford Clay, I don't just make pottery, I also make books and courses for other potters who want to be more environmentally friendly in their pottery making. And that's what this podcast is all about. And I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hello, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Tomlinson. Thank you for joining me today. So this is going to be, this is episode 4 of the 10-part series on how to make a raw glazed mug on the potter's wheel. So if you've been following along, we're now up to the point where we've got our handle, we've made our mug. We've talked about, what kind of things you need to think about, like before you make a mug, like the size, the clay, things like that. So, in today's episode, we're going to be going to be showing you how I turn the foot of the mug. So, some people also call this trimming. It's when you turn the pot upside down and again, you're using the potter's wheel and you're shaping the foot of that mug or that pot and making it like really, really beautiful. It's a great opportunity to sort of make it just look really beautiful. So make your pot to look really good. So let's get on with the episode. And if you wanted to see how it's done, you can look at the YouTube video. If you're listening on the podcast, you can just click on the link in the show notes, and it'll take you to the YouTube version. And let's get on with the episode. Hello, welcome back. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to be turning the pot. So some people also call this trimming the pot. Um, and I actually love this process. This is like my favorite bit, the favorite bit of making a pot because it's just so satisfying. If you imagine like I never actually spiralized any vegetables, but, like, it's a kind of similar process. You're just, like, kind of carving bits of clay off, and it's a really satisfying process in terms of, like, kind of shaping the pot. You take a pot from what looks quite sort of it can be, like, quite messy, like, "Oh, that's not great," to kind of it looking, like, just beautiful with a beautiful, like, foot, and it just completely finishes it off and really up levels the way it looks, your pot. Okay, so I think I said in the last episode, oh, I put the pot in a plastic box. I'm just going to leave it there for a few days. And actually, I decided, right, it's the next day, and I want to do this the next day. So what I did was I took the lid off the box, the plastic box. And the reason we're storing it in a plastic box is we don't want it to dry out like too fast because we want to be trimming the pot. I'm just going to call it turning for this episode, also known as trimming. But we don't want it to be too like dry. We don't want it to dry out too fast. Sometimes if you'll have like the rim, which is thinner, that'll dry out like faster than the base. And so we want it to be drying like really evenly. And so by storing it in like, some kind of thing to keep it damp. So some people cover their work up with like a plastic bag, or some people I read in a book once that someone used like an old fridge for doing this as well. Or, in pottery studios, sometimes you have in evening class studios, sometimes you have um, like a damp cupboard that you can store work in, but like a plastic storage box, just, which is just from the supermarket, just for storing things in, is such a good way of making a kind of small damp box. So that's what I use. And so what I did was I took the lid off yesterday for about half a day, and then I put the lid back on all night, and then now it's kind of like the afternoon the next day. And this pot is quite warm at the moment, outside the weather, so it's really not an exact science. That's what's quite difficult about it. It's not like, oh, and then you can leave it for this amount of time and it's dry enough. It's like it's basically leather hard, but I would say maybe on the ever so slightly softer side than leather hard, because we do want to still like be attaching the handle. That's the next stage after this, and so we don't want it to be like too hard. We also don't want to be turning. So I was going to call it turning, they call it trimming. Like we don't want to be turning the pot, the base of the pot when it's too dry. Okay, so um, what we need to do, step one, is basically you take your pot off whatever, whatever you had it on when you slid it off the wheel. And although sliding it onto the back of a tile didn't work so well, you remember in the last episode, um, so yeah, it was quite awkward to get on. It actually came off that tile really, really well. Sometimes if it kind of glues, if I'd done it on the kind of glazed side of that tile and slid it onto that, or even the piece of wood, I've had the pot like really stuck fast onto that, and it's a bit of a nightmare because you can't it's really hard to get it off. So that was a really good, yeah, it's kind of porous, this other side of the tile. So it kind of, the pot came off really easily. So what we're doing is we're going to, first of all, stick the pot to the wheel. And then we're going to trim some of that clay off, that excess clay off that we don't need on the base. So we're just going to turn it. So basically we're attaching it onto the wheel like upside down. So the rim is basically going to be attached to the potter's wheel. Okay, so let's get going. Um, just get my chair. Okay, so in terms of like the tools that we're using, you can get special trimming, turning tools. So they are basically, if you imagine like a kind of, like if you were going to gouge out, say like, oh, basically like an apple corer kind of thing, but um, like a kind of flat version of that. So they kind of have like a sort of, I don't know how to describe it, basically like a hole. It's like a kind of, it's like an apple core, but like a flat, and they kind of, like a flat version. They kind of have like a sort of sharp. They're not very very sharp, but they'll have a kind of sharp blade-ish sort of side to them. These are the ones I really like to use, and there's other ones you can get which are like kind of triangles that can people can kind of scrape the clay off with those. But but yeah, I really love these ones here with the kind of like the holes in them, the kind of the bladed ones kind of thing. But yeah, like I said, it's not too sharp. So the first thing we're going to do is stick to the pot to the wheel. So what we want to do is we're going to get a bit of water. So you need kind of water around for turning, but not, we're not going to use loads of water, but we're going to use it to be like kind of making the pot look nice. And also we're going to use it to stick the pot to the wheel. So I've got a little bit of water on here. It's not, we don't want the wheel completely flooded, but I'm just putting a little bit of water on the wheel. And then we're going to just kind of try and create it. We're going to put the pot like rim side down on the potter's wheel. We're just going to create a little suction. And we can use the rings of the wheel to see whether that pot is like in the right place. And sometimes you'll have a thing where the rim is in the right place and then like the the base of it isn't. And what I usually do is I just put the rim in the center, and then it means that when I then turn the base and the rim are kind of like matched up. Just going to turn my wheel on. So another thing to say is that sometimes people put like extra clay around the rim to kind of stick it onto the wheel. And I used to do this, and then I realized that quite a lot of the time I was like kind of squashing my pot in when I was putting the pieces of clay like around it on the wheel. So what I've been doing recently is kind of just trying to stick it on the wheel head. It's not completely stuck, but it does a pretty good job of being stuck with just like that suction, like that little bit of water, and kind of moving it around, getting it stuck, and then like kind of getting it in the right place. And then then if you just leave it, then it kind of sticks to the wheel, which is really really good. So the thing to say before you start doing this, actually before you've even attached the pot to the wheel, is that it's a really good idea to kind of see how thick your pot is. Kind of do like a potter's assessment of like how much clay is there, how much clay do I want to take off, how thick is the base, because I don't want to take off like loads of clay on the base if the base is really really thin. And I know that from this, just looking at this part and like feeling it earlier, was that like there is quite a lot of clay on this side bit, but I don't really want to go down too much in the middle bit. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to get the wheel going, and you want to go like quite slow for this process. Um, so I can see that that's what I do is I then get the pot center then on the wheel. And what you can do is hopefully you can see this. Basically, I get my finger, it's just a little bit wet, and then I just kind of hold it against the pot, and I can see where it's off center, like it's coming towards me. Then what I can do is then I can push it back. So it doesn't have to be again. Doesn't have to be completely centered, but I can see that it needs to get pushed back a little bit there. Sometimes you'll keep doing this and then you'll end up just kind of keeping on knocking it off center. It's really annoying. But okay, that I think that's centered enough for me. So let's just let's just start turning it. So what I'm going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a line for myself, and I don't want to go kind of like too I don't want the foot to be too small. There's been times I've done this and I've made like a smaller and smaller and smaller foot, and I'm like, oh no, I don't want this. It is like, it's going to fall over. And with this mug, I want it to be like really nice, heavy, kind of heavy base, so it doesn't fall over. So I'm just going to mark with a kind of score, this is just a kind of pointed scoring tool, and I'm just going to mark like where I want my kind of foot ring to be. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my favorite turning tool, which is kind of like if you imagine like a strip of flat kind of metal in a hoop kind of type, like tool, and it's this is a really good one. It's a really sharp one, and I'm just holding it against the side, and I'm just allowing like little curls of clay to like get sort of um, cut off basically. And this is quite a long process, but it's really satisfying. Basically just shaping it by basically by like taking the curls of clay off, by like just slicing little slices of clay off as the wheel's going round. Yeah, and like I said, it's quite a slow rate to be doing this at. And what we're just trying to do is we're really just trying to take off excess clay so it's not like too heavy, and we're just going to and we're trying to shape the foot, trying to shape the base of the pot. So you don't have to make a foot. You can have the base however you want, you don't have to make one of those feet with like the kind of the dip in the middle. You can just kind of yeah, do it however you want to do it. Um Just notice sometimes when you're turning, actually you kind of notice like little bits, like if you reclaim clay especially, you can get like little bits, imperfections. I've just noticed a bit like a little rock or something in the clay, which is must have come from somewhere. Yeah, I can see it. Let me just get that out because that's gonna like make a hole. That's annoying. Yeah, so random. It's just like a little kind of little stone in the clay that's kind of made a hole. But that will kind of go away as I continue to turn the pot. The hole will sort of like close up and get carved off anyway, get carved out. But yeah, it's a good idea just to kind of get rid of it, get rid of any little stones you see in your clay. This should be a smooth clay. Okay, I can see the stone isn't gone; it's still there. Let's just get it out. Okay. So yeah, so we're basically just going to continue to do this until we like the shape of it. And you can see I've come up against now to the point where I did my mark, so I know that that's kind of as far as I want to go. And I just want to take off a little bit more. You can also trim. You can also trim the like side of the pot to make that look at the way you want it. So if you don't, sometimes you get like lines when you're throwing and you don't want those. I think they look really beautiful actually. But if you want it to be like completely smooth, you can also trim those out as well. And the tools with like a really big flat kind of hoop, like the one I'm using right now, that they're really good for doing that. They can do like a really good job on like the sides, making the sides look really flat. So, okay, so what I'm thinking about now is I'm thinking about the shape. I'm thinking about I don't want to take off too much because I don't want to go through the pot. So I'm kind of just if you're worried about that and you're thinking, oh, is it getting a bit thin? You can just gently touch your finger to the side of the pot, and then you can see if it's feeling squishy, then it's like, oh, stop, because that means the clay is really thin, kind of thing. So I quite like that. I do want it to be quite heavy base, this one, because I don't want the cup of tea to fall over. Nothing worse than when you've made a cup of tea and then you knock it over, like a full one as well. And you're like, no, I was going to drink that. I was really looking forward to it. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of taking off a little bit more because I just want to make it look like prettier. a little bit prettier. I'm just taking off a few of those throwing ridges, not all of them, but just a few down the bottom. Okay, I think that's looking good. Okay, so a teacher once told me in pottery never to touch the very base of your pot, because basically when you're, if you think, oh no, the base isn't flat, and you're trying to get a flat base, you really don't need to do that at this stage. I've got a great technique for doing that later, and I'll show it to you. And it's just literally twisting it on a wet cloth, and it creates a beautifully flat base. So don't touch the base at this point, unless you're creating a foot, but don't touch the actual flat surface that's going to come into contact with, the surface when your pot is finished. Okay, that's looking nice. I like that. The shape of it. So what you can do is you can lean your head down, have a look at the profile of your pot, and that's how you can kind of like get a profile that you want. And I actually spend ages turning. I'm going to try not to go overboard today. So I don't want, I don't know what a podcast episode is going to be like, but you're just kind of listening to me like silently turning apart. So I thought, let's try and keep it short. Okay. So another thing to say actually is it is a good idea to take off. You don't want you do want to take off quite a lot of the heaviness in the base, because your pot can actually crack. If I read a Bernard Leach diary entry once that said that basically the bases of some pots were too thick and then they cracked in the kiln. So we kind of want the pot to be fairly evenly, walled all the way through. We don't want really, really, really thick clay, like on the base. So I think the sides of that look nice, but what I'm going to do is I am going to take off a little bit of this middle section. So I'm going to actually create a foot, but I'm going to create quite a thick foot. So again, what I'm doing is I'm going to just use some guide rings. um, I want a really thick foot there because I just really want a stable cup. So I've just created like a kind of inner circle, and then I'm going to use a slightly different turning tool, a more kind of, I guess, like a smaller hoop. Um, so this one is like a kind of just a more just it's just a more kind of intricate cutting tool. And it just enables me to cut out like kind of a finer section. And I'm literally just putting that in the middle of the pot now, and then just um, like scooping out. Yeah, I guess scooping out is like the best kind of way of describing it. I don't want to go down too far. I don't think I've got that much at the bottom here. I don't have that much clay, so I don't want to go down too far. But I do just want to make a nice flat inner circle so that we've got like a proper foot. Yeah, because it's just made me realize there's actually like sometimes when you're doing this, you sort of change your mind. You're like, actually, I will have a foot, because it's like you realize that actually you could go down a bit further because, as you're doing it, maybe the shape, maybe you just kind of get inspired by the shape and you just think, actually, yeah, that would look really nice. Or, you realize that you've actually got a bit more clay to play with, kind of thing, and you can take a bit more off. So it's okay to like change your mind. You don't have to go in with like a preconceived like, design. I never actually do that. I just basically wing it. Can you tell? Okay, so there we go. I'm just using another tool to kind of flatten out this inner ring. So we want it to be nice and flat. I really don't want to make it too thin because this is what we're going to be putting our maker's mark on a bit later. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so it's kind of got a little, sometimes you get like weird little jaggedy edges. And so let's try and just smooth those out. But in a second, we're just going to use a cloth to smooth the whole thing out. It's going to be really nice. It's going to look so nice. Okay, there we go. That's kind of flat enough. Um, just take off some of this excess, like kind of little burrs of clay. I'm just going to make the pattern of this side bit a little bit nicer. That's not quite the right tool to use. This one's nice. There we go. I'm just going to go in a little bit just to make it like look a little bit nicer. Okay. And then smooth it out again. Oh yeah, that's looking really nice. So yeah, just kind of playing with the shape until you're happy with the shape and you're happy with the shape of the foot. I like that. I'm going to stop because I don't want to overdo it and I don't want to take off too much. I think I think if I had like, a little bit more time, I'd probably be like going right in there. But I think this is a really good time to stop because I do tend to make them a little bit like, I don't want it to be too thin. So like I think um by more time, I just mean me messing around for like hours. So let's like I think it's really good good to have boundaries. Let's stop there. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm just taking a viscose sponge. Oh, oh gosh, I literally just dropped the sponge on the pot. It's okay. It's okay. Um, so like, right, yeah. So we've got the viscose sponge, it's just from the supermarket, just like a cleaning sponge. Like I said before, they're really good because they're like really soft and just smoothing. So this is a really good time to smooth everything out. And I know I said to you a minute ago, oh, don't touch the base, but I'm touching the base at this point because I don't want to have like loads of burrs, kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, like burrs of clay, sort of extra bits of clay, like sharp edges basically. So I'm kind of just smoothing all the sharp edges. That's what I want to do right now. I just don't want any sharp edges. I'll make it really nice and smooth. Um, okay, that's looking really nice. It's like super smooth now, like with a sponge. And I'm going to just check the profile again. So am I happy with that profile? Um, you know what? I am happy with that profile. And I'm also going to just use this at this point, this opportunity, just to sponge a little bit of the near the rim, so you can just use this point to kind of make it really really nice, like the whole pot really really nice in terms of like the surface of it. It's a great opportunity to do that now. And also, it will really help when we come to stick on the handle in a minute. That's the next stage. Yeah, it's really helpful to have like a nice kind of like freshly sponged surface, basically. Yeah, because this is your opportunity to kind of use the motion of the wheel going around to get a really nice, like smooth surface. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is we're going to take it off the wheel. And now just to say, sometimes when you take a pot off the wheel, it makes you realize that actually it's too heavy and you want to take more off. And that's absolutely fine. You just go through the process again. You're like, just wetting the wheel, sticking it on again. And then just you're trying to get the foot in the center. That's kind of ideal. Otherwise, you'll have to cut all you really want that foot like right in the center. And then you can kind of carry on where you left off in terms of taking clay away and stuff. So I've got a feeling this is going to be a little bit maybe heavy, but I think it's going to be fine, eventually, because when it all dries out, I just do want a nice substantial foot. So what I'm doing is I'm going to cup my hands around it and I'm just going to wiggle it slightly just to dislodge it from the wheel. There we go. So that came off really easily, which is great. Oh no, that's really nice. It's not too thick on the bottom. So you can feel it straight away how heavy it is. And you can feel if you've taken like, if you need to take off more, you'll just feel it because it'll be like really heavy. What you can do then is just get a sponge and just wipe any bits around the rim that have that have been sort of added from like kind of slurry from the wheel, basically from when you turned it. So there we go. Okay, so there we go. I don't know if you can see it. It's basically a turned pot. It's got its foot ring. Can you see that? Yeah, it's got its foot ring, and it's ready to. Yeah, at this point, it's ready to have the handle attached. So um, I don't want to let this dry out too much. So I'm going to put it back in its little box, and then when the handle is the same dryness, so I've actually already made the handle, but we'll do that in the next episode in terms of like how to make it and stuff. Because it's great to make handles before you turn, because then when then they'll dry and then you can put them straight on your like turned pot and stuff. So um yeah, so you want the handle and the pot to be like the same amount of dryness. You don't want the handle to be drier, you don't want the pot to be drier, because than the other one, because then they will crack apart. So this is like, yeah, this is one of the most kind of, I'd say like timing is probably like 90% of pottery. And so yeah, so this is going like back into the sort of damp box, and then join me for the next episode where we'll be doing the handle, we'll be making the handle, and we'll be like attaching it onto the pot. So I'll see you then. Thank you so much for joining me on that episode. And if you want to find out more about eco-friendly pottery, head over to the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. Can't wait to see you there.